Oh, and the best part is, after we watched the movie, a lot of us just started around, took pictures, and whatever Kamen Rider poses we came up with, I went with Shotaro's pose. And then after all of that, the first opening to the original show started playing, and we all sang along karaoke style.
Semaru Shoka Jigoku no Gundan.
And then when we all did, like the Rider jump, Rider kick, we all did the kicks. That was definitely probably the most communal theater experience I've ever had. I think it's probably the only one as well, but still. And that's the story of how I saw Shin Kamen Rider.
I want to kill you. It's not fair.
Longcrit, come on.
It's not fair.
Can't you just be happy for him?
So, CBF, let's get to the meat of things. Good movie?
Good movie. Pretty good movie.
Good movie?
Dare I say, right off the bat, it's a high 7.
Oh, sweet.
Oh my god. Oh, actually, in honor of this occasion, behind your backs, I went and watched the first 2 episodes of the original Kamen Rider earlier, so we can compare notes.
Okay, cool. Taking my approach to things.
I didn't like it.
Fake fan.
I found it boring, largely nonsensical, and also like it was in speedrun mode. The 2-episode story structure would have really helped it out.
Oh, they didn't go with that? I thought they would definitely go with a 2-parter to start with.
I guess that's something they had to develop later on.
Nope. Show installments are episodic, not bi-episodic. The bi-episodic nature was only developed with Kamen Rider Kuga, where stories were 2 episodes long.
So even Black was episodic. Because I remember you said you saw some of Black.
Yeah.
Yeah, Black, in my opinion, though, starts off, like, just way stronger. Because, like, a lot of scenes are copy-pasted, or, like, basically reinterpreted. Mainly copy-pasted, really. Like, the first episode of Black especially, or the first 2 are, like, really close to the original Kamen Rider. This is where, CBF, you and I compare notes, because they did some things that I found to be missed opportunities that you let me know ahead of time the movie did better. There's one scene where Hongo, like, goes to pour himself some water, he turns on a tap, and he feels, water's not coming off, so he keeps turning and turning and turning, and then he just, like, snaps the metal bit of the tap right off, and he looks at it and he's like, oh my god. I can't control my strength. And that's when he realizes that, he could accidentally cause extraordinary harm to a human. Like, think of that scene from Shin Kamen Rider Spirits where Hayato accidentally, nearly strangles Ruriko. None of that happens in the first 2 episodes of Kamen Rider. He, like, full-on grabs, shoves, etc. human beings. Nothing ever comes from that. And it's like 1 or 2 minutes that this happens to, right after he snaps the tap off.
Yeah, in fact, the very first scene of the movie is a fight scene where, like, he and Ruriko are being chased, and after eventually they get off the motorcycle and are surrounded by goons, he just plows through all of them, just one-shots them. Every single punch, every single kick, just, like, blasts through their entire body. You just see giblets flying out, hitting the trees, hitting the camera. And it's only when he gets to the bathroom and he sees himself in the mirror does he realize, holy crap, I am not human anymore, and also, I cannot control my own strength. All of those guys I beat up, I didn't just beat them up, I bulldozed through them.
Yeah, like, oh my god, that's the thing that I kind of really appreciated, just seeing a lot of fight scenes and stuff that got posted about it. I really love how this movie, I haven't seen it of course, but from what I've seen anyways, had done such a great job of, like, mixing the sort of over the top, like, a bit of theatrics that are associated with the series, and with the sort of, like, brutal grounded realism underneath. I really like that angle. So the fact that they did it a lot more textually involving Hongo's character, I appreciate.
Surprisingly, there was blood in the original. Not like that, though. So what you'd have is, like, sometimes, right, Kamen Rider would grab some Shocker Mooks and, like, throw them over his shoulder, sometimes off a cliff, and then you'd just, like, see blood, like red paint, just splatter all over what looks like a pavement, but, like, really, really close up. And actually, when he killed Spider-Man, just the entire area got covered in, again, blood, massive air quotes, just spilling out. It was either... No, it wasn't Spider-Man, it was Batman. Yeah, it was Batman in episode 2. And this also happened once when he either punched a shocker mook or like hit it with the baton. So you don't see them directly bleed, but you have a thin area that looks like the color and texture of the pavement that they're on, and they spill red paint over it. So that does give the impression of like kind of bloodiness and a level of brutality. A lot of the other times, to portray the disintegration, by the way, that you can oftentimes see in other installments, they just have like, I shit you not, they have bubbles, and you kind of just see them go into a drain until like they go down into nothing, and it looks weird because it looks like they had bubbles like come out from a drain and then they just like reversed it. So you see them like go back into the hole into nothingness.
Yeah, sort of like an acid solution thing.
No, just like actual bubbles, like they just turn into bubbles. Which they reference in Shin Kamen Rider when Kamen Rider kills Spider-Man, when he just like turns into bubbles and then the bubbles disintegrate. And the interesting thing there is that it does happen when Kamen Rider does a rider kick, but it also happens when like Spider-Man poisons individuals with poison darts, which implies that through his body, Kamen Rider is able to secrete a similar toxin as a more advanced cyborg to what Spider-Man has to use, like tools of sorts to use. I think that's a really interesting detail.
That toxin is actually called prana. It's basically this all-life thing. It's odd, but it's like basically any subject of Shocker that just gets filled with that, like Kamen Rider, like all the mutants he has to take out, that will happen to them. Anyone who was tested on, you will basically disintegrate just so that no body will be left behind, just to cover their tracks.
I think that's interesting because, yeah, Spider-Man actually once uses it on one of the mooks. I think this was a wasted opportunity because, like, Kamen Rider takes him into, like, a chokehold, and it doesn't even seem like he's going to betray Shocker, and then just to be extra sure, like, Spider-Man shoots him with a dart in the neck, and then he disintegrates. I actually think this idea was better utilized in one episode I saw, or like some bits I saw of V3. I think it was either V3 or Stronger. Well, like, Kamen Rider, either V3 or Stronger, actually catches a mook, starts interrogating them, they talk. You actually see a mook talk for once, and then that's when they get shot and disintegrated to completely cover tracks. So I think, yeah, just first two episodes feel like a lot of missed opportunities and a lot of, like, wasted ideas. But from what you're telling me, CBF, this seems like it's, like, way better. Actually, do any of the Shocker people do anything, like, truly, like, conventionally abhorrent, like, just kill one of their own?
In terms of that, I'm pretty sure at least one of them used a mook as a body shield once, but otherwise, in terms of conventionally horrible things, it's just generally killing and brainwashing people.
Ooh.
Okay, do we see them actually do that to one of Takeshi's loved ones or something, or Ruriko's loved ones?
Takeshi does not have anyone in this movie, so there is no opportunity for that. He is riding all on his lonesome. The only one he had was already dead.
Oh shit, okay.
You know, it's funny you should say that, because when you said Takeshi, and when CBF said his thing, the first thing that came to my mind is, oh, okay, so the villain's Takeshi Asakura did.
But yeah, no, like Hongo, he's riding all on his lonesome with Ruriko. Ruriko's loved ones, well, there's of course, you know, the main scientist, so naturally he's gonna have to be dealt with. And anyone else, let's just say that goes into even further spoiler territory.
Okay, fair enough.
Okay, so CBF, I want to ask you something interesting. How do they exactly, like, present Shocker? Because we all know that Shocker is, like, made from the descendants of the Nazi party. I think they mentioned that later in the original Kamen Rider. They certainly, like, mention it very upfront in the manga, which is an idea I really liked, because it's, like, literally, you know, the best of humanity, but you see, like, Kamen Rider himself, while he has supernatural abilities, the fact that makes him a hero is that he's a good human being. He makes the difficult but the right decisions, and has like a very like selfless, a kind of conscientious mindset, and I think that's what makes him so impressive as a superhero. And to contrast that, you just have like Shocker that are representative of quite possibly some of the most like evil humanity has gotten. But it seems that Arno reinterpreted it. I'm getting like very culty vibes from like the way Shocker operates in Shin Kamen Rider.
Yeah, kinda, cause Nazis, no. there is no Nazi origin in this movie. They are essentially very deluded people based on, if I remember correctly, there was a scientific program created with an AI that essentially was given the task to fulfill humanity's happiness. And it basically had to algorithmically find what it deemed to be the best solution. And therein, it would get people and make them into mutants so that they would find their own ways of achieving their own happiness. It's just that, most of those ways are shit like killing people, brainwashing them to to turn the world into an authoritarian regime, doing like chemical warfare, not good stuff.
Burn down a few orphanages, stuff like that. It kind of reminds me of like the way that Black Ghost, which is definitely much of like Shocker-ish analog from Cyborg 009, the main villains. Now, the main villains of that organization isn't like an AI, they're more so like 3 brains of like actual people trapped in a space station and just controlling everything from the shadows.
Like psychopaths.
Like psychopaths, yes.
Actually, fuck, you know what? Like Kamen Rider. That's literally what happens in the manga.
Oh, okay. But yeah, it kind of evokes this sort of all-encompassing thing where it's all like this being or these beings that represent the highest of like human intelligence would also at the same time become even more like cruel and callous towards the basics of like dignity towards humanity.
Like in the original manga, like Hongo literally becomes like a brain in a jar and telepathically communicates with Ichimonji after he gets fatally wounded.
Yeah, sure. Actually, speaking of Shocker, I forget how the acronym is in like the original. In this one, it is Sustainable Happiness Organization with Computational Knowledge Embedded Remodeling.
Yeah, that sounds extremely culty.
Yeah, that's very culty. That sounds like a Scientology type beat or something.
So, what I really want to ask you, CBF, because one thing I'm really looking forward to the film is, how does Shin Kamen Rider represent, or not, the idea that Hongo is a good person? Because, like, there's a little more friction in the original show. He's like, Doctor, can I become human again? In the manga, he doesn't even think about it, like, no, I cannot become human again, because then there will be nobody with the power to oppose Shocker. So how do they represent, like, his selflessness and the idea that he's, like, a good, conscientious person in the film?
He's very just, like, mission-driven about his goals. Like, sure, he was a little bit hesitant at first when asked about everything, but not in a, oh, no, I'm gonna back out in a way, but in a, he needs to process things kind of way. He definitely needs to process things, but when he does, his decisions are instant. He never really...
He doesn't dwell, he just kind of contemplates, right?
Yeah, just like, he contemplates, he dwells on the impacts things are having, but never once is he dissuaded from his promise that he gave to Ruriko's father to protect her.
Alright, that's interesting. I wanted to actually ask about how they handled the relation between Takeshi and Ruriko in this movie. Would you say that it's endearing?
Yeah, actually I wanted to ask that as well. Before you answer, I actually want to add to that question. Ruriko seems to have, like, progressed in some ways in how we think about her. Like, in the manga, she's just the girlfriend. In the show, she thinks that Hongo, like at least in the first 2 episodes, she thinks that Hongo murdered her father, and she takes like proactive action to apprehend him at some point, but generally speaking, she's like there to be threatened, and for like Hongo to try and protect her while fighting off the Kaijin. But in Shin Spirits, she's like, first of all, she has that thing with Ichimonji where she like tests his humanity, or rather challenges him to give him courage to use his power wisely by risking her life to show to him that he can control his power and he can do the right thing. And later on, she full-on, like, becomes a proactive accomplice, putting herself in danger to battle the Kaijin and work with the other Kamen Riders. But the thing is, her father in the original series was the one that broke Hongo out. He was a scientist for Shocker, and turning Hongo was one step too far for him, and so he betrayed Shocker and broke him out. But from what I'm getting from, like, trailers and clips and stuff, it seems that Ruriko herself is the scientist in the Shin film.
No, her father is still the scientist. That last part that you said is essentially still what happens here. Just about everything else, though, is mostly in a different direction in this movie. In fact, she feels like she's trying to deny any grief she may have over her dad's death because she doesn't really like him. And she also tries to basically dissuade Hongo from his mission and his promise of protecting her. So she kind of doesn't fully trust him. She tries to do things on her own for a little while at first, in a way that almost feels like it's trying to test Hongo. But eventually, she comes around to him, just like ends up relying on him, still does things on her own to back him up. He tries to back her up. They get into like a symbiotic relationship of like working together. No romance involved. So I remember you once asked me if there was a love triangle like in the first. No.
Thank God. Honestly, I definitely didn't really get all that much of a romantic vibes from like the trailers and clips and all that, and I feel like given how much more, for lack of a better term, like freaking gruff a lot of things are in the movie compared to anything else that I've seen from the original series, I think it definitely fits a lot better somehow. I don't know, it just feels better to me.
Yeah, and like, she definitely exposes her vulnerabilities towards him, eventually lets him in on things more. Like, they rely on each other, but I never actively got the sense that there was going to be any romantic direction, especially with how things go in the last third of the movie in particular.
Is she actually supposed to have been his girlfriend in the film?
In this film, no.
Oh, okay. Okay, right. So, what I really want to ask you is, what do you think works best about the film? Because from what discussions we've had of the podcast before the film, the feeling I get is the sheer sense of, like, cruelty of the film, particularly towards Hongo, and not only, like, challenging him, but beating him down. Because this was a big theme in the manga that really stood out to me. It's the hardship of Hongo's journey and the fact that he lost everything, and he wasn't able to be with what he cared about that remained, because it would be too dangerous, and this had to be his life forever. He doesn't beat the bad guy and then gets to live his life. That is his life from now until the end of time. And at least in the first 2 episodes, the toku, that didn't happen, and I didn't like that. He's like, not a champion racer, but he's like a very proficient racer who's going to a championship. And like, episode 2, you know, he's back to racing, he's doing his thing, he's doing stuff in his life, and people are like coming and cheering for him, and then chakra attacks. But in the manga, they are relentless. They will not let him have a life. They will destroy or weaponize everything that he cares about against him, and what that hasn't been done to has already been lost forever. So how does the film, like, what do you think, like, really works?
We actually do get a few moments of levity, like when he is like camping out with Ruriko. Just like, that was like a pretty pleasant scene that just showing that, oh, he can still find his own happiness in the little things. Just like, oh, just camping out with his motorcycle, even if it's a lot less convenient than traditional methods. But ultimately, it's just that sense of vulnerability and just like expressing emotions. Just like, you already know there's a scene where he ugly cries. I'm not gonna say how and why we get to that point. The way they linger on that, just the sense of isolation, just letting the emotions wash over you. Like, that is what I think the movie does best. Just letting things
be depressing.
Yeah.
Sit with you. Just like the sorrow, the isolation. And he's not even the only one who ugly cries either. The final antagonist of this movie, his final scenes are spectacular for a similar reason. And just like the ideological conflict he has with Hongo is also pretty great. It's just like shows that even with all of the crushing despair, there is still a level of hope, even if it's not always for everyone, and even if it's not always for them.
It's definitely not for Hongo.
Yeah.
Because, like, that's the thing that stood out to me most about the manga. It's optimistic about the capacity of human beings to do the right thing. But unlike a lot of modern Kamen Rider installments, you know, that have happy endings, that are broadly positive, and it's not just the ending, it's like a lot of stuff along the way. And its core, in my opinion, while it has like Ishinomori's light and cartoony looking style in some ways, the original Kamen Rider is supremely depressing.
Oh yeah, this film keeps that level of grimness to a large extent.
Yeah. from what you've always told me about the series Lumcrit and everything, like, say what you want about, all the fuck shit that Spider-Man or other similar heroes go through, and you definitely can, but at least most of the time, they're not actively being, like, targeted by one single party relentlessly going after them. Which I think puts it in a whole other league of just emotional weight to it that I really appreciate.
I'll have like one final note. We'll just talk about the way they handle Ichimonji here is also pretty good. He feels a lot more cavalier than the rest, but still has his own sense of justice and duty, partially regarding his former occupation as a journalist, before being brainwashed and turned into another Kamen Rider. And like the way things resolved with him and Hongo and everyone, that was also pretty nice to see. And it adds like a little bit more levity in a movie that was generally very quiet and dour, but not in a way where it actively messes with what the movie's going for. Because yeah, like the movie, it can be very still, very quiet, could still have all the fun tokuisms and like the different battle styles, which are a little hit and miss. Some fights are pretty cool, some not so much, but yeah. And the movie does, kind of like the next one we're going to talk about, kind of feels like 5 episodes sort of quickly stitched together with very little breathing room.
But I'm guessing it's A-okay because those are 5 hella good episodes that flow weirdly well.
Yeah, and which you can't say for most Disney direct-to-DVD movies because they have a similar thing going on.
Like, we didn't even get to talk about like some of the other suits that sort of travel on with them and have their own plot going on. Because yeah, we gotta move on. But yeah, this movie, it was pretty good.
Yeah. By the way, Ichimonji, regardless of the interpretation, he seems to always be like the energetic, more overtly positive and somewhat funny / charming one. This is also why I wanted to do this episode on these 2 films, because, okay, you've got Shin Kamen Rider, that obviously, like, is very depressing, but then you've got Shin Ultraman, which is supremely positive and optimistic.
Yeah, very much so.
What did we think?
Very good movie.
Good movie.
Good movie.
Good movie.
Good movie.
Good movie.
It is a
good
good
ending.
movie.
Good movie. I clapped.
Yeah, and just like you did with Kamen Rider, I watched the first 2 episodes of Ultraman just to get a little bit of a feel for it. It's a lot more of a homely feel. This is my first time seeing like a giant hero toku, and one where you got like all the little toys to represent like the ships and stuff, all the dioramas and props that explode and get set on fire, and the 2 dudes that basically wrestle in giant rubber suits, just slapping, beating on each other, grappling, yeah, just basically wrestling until someone dies.
So I want to preface this section because I wanna mention my favorite quote from the film, or my favorite interaction that I really feel represents what is the most special about this film, and what makes Ultraman a truly heroic character. His interaction with Zophie. The planet of light has documented nearly 13 billion intelligent life forms. The loss of one will have no impact on the universe. For the inhabitants of this planet, one is all there is. I'm like, yo, that really made Ultraman as a character. That was excellent. Like, it's the idea of, like, statistics and individuals. Obviously, humanity's still a collective in this case, but that really, like, made Ultraman's character for me. That's, like, one of the greatest things in the movie. And, like, by the way, I think the first thing to start with is Ultraman's motivation, the very impetus of what compels him to become humanity's defender against these, like, godlike extraterrestrial beings. He saw one guy sacrifice himself to protect the life of a child, and that made him wonder of the infinite capacity of mankind to do good.
Yeah, similar to how you described Doctor Who in a way, but in the show it's actually different. He just sort of like, he follows the enemy into Earth, they both crash land, but Ultraman's sphere crash lands into Hayata, who is probably the main protagonist of the show, and he's just like, sorry about that, I was following this guy to take him down because he's an enemy. As a result of me inconveniencing you, here is my power. You can summon me at any time. It's just like more mission driven as opposed to, oh, I'm inspired by the fact that this man sacrificed himself to do the right thing. I think I'm gonna learn more about these guys and work with these guys.
I'm not gonna lie, I like what the movie did better.
Yeah, I was about to say, I think it's a lot more interesting, especially with the direction that the movie takes. It had a lot of the potential to be a lot more dour than it ended up being, just given how a lot more grounded they are taking the approach, but I do like that they ended up in the direction that they did without coming off as like too upbeat. It's a really fine balance, I feel, especially with this kind of feel for the movie.
CBF?
I'd say its level of bluntness, there are a few kind of awkward conversations where they more overtly, even between the human characters, just like actively verbalize, just like, oh, humanity, we all exist, we're kind of like a herd. Oh, you cannot keep doing things in a lone wolf style. We are a team, we are buddies, we need to work together.
Okay, that was a little bit much.
I actually really like that, because, like, Ultraman is the alien, but then it's the idea that the crew is, like, also a bunch of weirdos.
Yeah, but it's like, it's happening between, the guy before he ever became Ultraman to begin with.
No, it was after.
No, it was before.
No, wait, I'm pretty sure
it was before. It was the first mission. Where it's just like, oh, this, or actually no, it was afterwards, but it was still just like, it was more him than Ultraman at that point, because typically he was already just like a very secretive loner type who wanted to cover all of his tracks. He didn't really believe in working together quite as much. It did feel like towards the end, the herd comments felt like it was more Ultraman trying to understand things.
Like, I don't know, like, the way you describe it from the show, it sounds like they're two separate entities, but the movie very much implies, like, their consciousnesses have merged and, like, imprinted onto each other. So I'm actually fine with that, and I really like how, again, the group, they're not normal people. They're all, like, kinda weird and have their, like, isms. Like, the way this woman talk is
yeah,
like...
you got, like, the nerd with all of his stuff. You got other people who are just very disgruntled and just, like, try to do things the best they can. They got, like, the main girl who still tries to be more upbeat than everyone else, but still has her own moments of frustration, especially with, like, the Giants incident.
Yeah, okay, that was hilarious. And by the way, on a related moment, like, I just want to say my favorite scene in the movie was the one with the giant woman in the suit.
Who would have guessed? Anyways.
Moving on.
No comment.
Can we, speaking of isms, can we just talk real quick about slap ass?
Oh my god. I thought we were not gonna talk about
Of all the gimmicks they gave her, that was hilarious.
Yeah,
I thought that was really funny. It's like, it's this really, like, stupid little thing they gave her, but I'm not gonna lie, I always found it funny and charming. And I love how she does it to herself, but then the other woman's nervous and she just, like, slaps her on the ass too.
And then does it with Ultraman at the very end as well. Like, when he's about to go up.
Oh yeah, that was, like, drop dead hilarious.
Oh my god, but like, but what you mentioned, CBF, about Shinji Kaminaga in the movie, not, you know, starring off as, to begin with, being kind of a standoffish guy, and then progressing towards this point, it actually kind of adds to basically the main theme that Longcrit was talking about, that makes Ultraman who he is as a character, because here is a guy who apparently seems to be some kind of, like, before getting into this group was sort of somewhat like an espionage officer, you know, a guy who is naturally supposed to be, you know, a bit more of a solo act, not really putting himself in too much risk for things, actively taking the opportunity to risk his own skin in order to save someone's life, a child's life. And that is the thing that freaking brought the alien down to Earth, as it were, and just instilled the idea that, you know, humanity's pretty cool. They're pretty cool. They're pretty swag.
Yeah. I do think they verbalize in a way that's a little, maybe cloyingly blunt at times, but I get what you guys are trying to say. And I think my favorite parts were definitely later on with, like, especially Mephisto. Mephisto was my favorite antagonist of the movie, just like his conversations with Ultraman. Oh, yeah, Mephilus, yeah. Which Sonico has 6 has something to say about that, but yeah.
I love when they go to the bar and they have the conversation about, like, dependence versus freedom to grow naturally. I found that to be, like, a very interesting dynamic between protagonist and antagonist.
Yeah, and just, like, the way he tries to handle things very just, like, rationally, and eventually he's like, oh, so it seems we're at an impasse. That's unfortunate. also, can we split the bill? It's just like, it felt homely, but also still very dramatic at the same time, in a way that was really cool. He seemed like a very genuinely engaging antagonist without actively trying to come off as like evil or threatening. He'll just like break down humanity's spirit with knowledge and then have them essentially submit to him peacefully.
Yeah, I really like, by the way, how like the movie's like pretty serious, but then it'll just very deadpan slide these jokes in. Like the woman will be like, all this content about me online, god damn it. And then Mephiles just chimes in to be like, I apologize for the inconvenience. I did not take into account the depths of human degeneracy. Let me just fix that for you. Snap.
Yeah, I was like, I did not expect humans to be this crude. I'm deleting that.
Yeah, she's like, fuck yeah!
When everyone's putting their coffees down, like in the climax, and we see like with, I forget what it is, and then another one with freaking Kyubey from Madoka.
I noticed that too, both the first time I saw the movie and the second one, and I found that drop dead hilarious. I also love how the otaku has like the spaceships, and it's like the SS Enterprise or whatever it's called from Star Trek, the original series, and he also has the Thunderbirds.
Yeah, just like all these little things that characterize everybody without having to be overt about it. Or taking too much time to digress and have a scene like, alright, here's all their little hobbies like they can afford to do in something like Ava. Here's just like, no, snap, 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 next scene, next scene, next scene, we gotta keep going. Everyone's just like very expedient.
Also, can I just say, I love the stuffed animal that they keep inserting in like a small transition in between scenes. It's very charming.
I really love how even though the movie does kind of feel like you just slapped a bunch of episodes together, like you can practically pinpoint and episodes start here. Well, like when they're having the conversation about what to do about Ultraman after the whole thing with Zarab, it just like, and even though it goes so quickly, it flows so nicely from one thing to the other that you kind of don't even mind. It's like it's weirdly quick, but it feels like a very, very smooth speedrun.
Yeah, I will say there's an odd thing when comparing this to Shin Kamen Rider. With Shin Kamen Rider, there were a few moments where you sort of just had to take them at their word, even if it felt hard to swallow. This one, it's like, no, it's actually different, because it's like, whenever you see something that feels kind of inexplicable, they will retroactively justify that just a couple minutes later. Like, say, how the main character got all the information to get to the main girl so she can go and free him, or the exact reasoning why Mephiles just looked at what essentially looked like another Ultraman and said, yeah, no, I'm done. We're done fighting. This planet, it doesn't mean anything anymore. Then you learn, oh yeah, it's the other planet of light. It's like, hey, you know, you did this thing, you did the forbidden technique, we're gonna have to punish you, come with us, leave humanity. And he was like, no? Okay, how about, I'm just gonna blow this thing up with this giant bomb that will eradicate the entire solar system.
Also, I would like to kind of point out that the visuals for this movie is just fantastic.
Oh, absolutely. Like, one thing that's just like, it strokes my soul is like in the beginning of the film, and like a lot of the shots are like, say, from the perspective of the laptops looking up at the characters, or like the bags of the snacks and stuff, like looking at them. Like a lot of the shots are like very like kind of in their situation like that. Oh yeah, the fights! I love how blunt, like, the early kaiju fights are. Like, I really like how, like, Ultraman just does the thing with his arms to, like, block the radiation blast, and then he's like, you know what? No. And he just walks towards it, and he's just, like, progressing. And it's like, why isn't he dodging? Because then that would put people in danger. And he's just like walking. I really liked how to ground itself, the kaiju, to not like be blown back. First it like secured itself in place into the mountain with the two other drills. There's a very nice little detail.
Yeah, and I like how like they immediately understood that just based on Ultraman looking at them. Even without having to speak, which he doesn't do until basically the second half of the movie for the most part, barring just when he's, you know, still the main character human guy. Everyone can already tell just based on him. Yeah, everyone can already just tell based on his actions and the way he looks at them.
Yeah, oh, by the way, I really love that one scene where, like, he's fighting the first kaiju when he first appears, and, like, the electricity is being shot at him, and you see, like, electricity around his feet. I like that the movie's, like, conscientious in that way, because, like, when like electricity hits you, what damages your body and what ultimately kills people isn't the electricity going into people, it's flowing through them. Like, if you touch an electric fence, what electrocutes you isn't, like, exposure to the electricity, it's the fact that it's flowing through you and going into the ground, using your body as a conductor. So, of course, like, when it goes into Ultraman, because he's on the ground, you're going to see the electricity on the ground as well.
Yeah. The movie essentially, for a lot of it, is a very expedient sort of procedural drama, with everybody trying to get things done, all the politicking, especially with Zerab, who initially seems like, oh, I'm sorry for this blackout I caused, let me wave my hand, it'll go away. I will try to do peaceful relations. And then it turns out, oh no, he's basically just trying to manipulate humanity into its destruction via politics. Or like Mephiles, when it turns out he was responsible for all of these attacks, essentially blaming it on all of humanity's woes, like in terms of their politics and the waste of their resources. And having that be his justification for awakening all the kaiju related to all of these things, before eventually revealing everything, because he came in actually before Ultraman.
I love how, like, all the aliens are, like, better at humaning than Ultraman, because they're all so good at playing the game, and then you have Ultraman just being, like, a massive weirdo. Did anybody notice that?
Or at least just two of them anyways. Yeah, I noticed that. And like, especially in the Mephiles scene, or just Mephiles in general, I like his saying, his whole thing where it's all like, oh, that's one of my favorite saying, or my least favorite sayings. It's a weird quirk that doesn't get annoying a whole lot because he just comes off as insanely charming, and ironically does a great job of just humanizing him.
Yeah, like, there's so much sophistication in this that reminds me of what I heard a lot about Kato pre-Trainwreck.
Yes! Yeah, I got so many Kato vibes from this entire thing, which is really good. Well, good Kato vibes, my bad. I have to distinguish that because fuck what the hell the second half was.
But yeah, like, I think that the highs for Shin Kamen Rider are probably even higher. It feels like it focuses more on just the raw vulnerability and emotions. This one has like a level of expediency and sophistication to it that was really cool to see. And of course, the ending was beautiful. Just like the way he decides, oh, he'll essentially sacrifice himself instead of coming along just so that the main character in humanity can live and have hope. And that's where we get the line of, you truly have become fond of humans, aren't you? It's like, I love that. You've truly become fond of humans.
Yeah, I love that line as well. I also really love how, like, at the end, he kind of sheds his role as the benevolent protector, because he ultimately helps humanity help themselves rather than helping them directly, because, like, he sets things up in such a way where he casts down the gauntlet, believing in humanity's potential, knowing that, like, they will likely overcome this trial themselves and, like, grow to meet the alien threat, rather than he himself just solving the problem for them. Because if I remember correctly, he could have set things up ahead of time to where that wouldn't have been an issue to begin with, but that's not what he did. He gave humanity like an opportunity to grow by challenging them to work together. And if they failed, well, that's it.
Especially since, as he stated, he is not a god. And like, again, like the way that the line "Have you become so fond of humans" was delivered, it wasn't like a sense of like surprise or shock. It was just like a level of sort of acknowledgement and understanding that I also really loved.
It feels like adults talking about children, but in a really good way.
No, that's what I was about to actually point out in regards to the ending, where what you said about him shedding his role. It can also kind of be interpreted from a meta perspective, just like the fact that Ultraman, you know, as a figure in our world, is sort of more so like a symbol that represents our capacity as people to do better and overcome numerous different trials ahead of us. And by him shedding his role and giving us the tools to kind of, you know, be able to meet whatever future threat comes next, it's sort of just like, I guess, him, the character, just passing that on to the audience in a way. That's kind of what I got.
Yeah, by the way, I just want to say, I love the fight against Zarab so much. Like, when Ultraman just like, I love how big and, like, slow the fights are. It's like, boom, boom, boom.
Yeah, like it actively sells the kaiju fighting.
Yeah, like when the music pops up and it's like ba 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 ba, and like Ultraman is like flying through the air, and you see him go vroom, from one side of the screen to the other. It's like, it's so exciting.
Yeah.
It's so exciting. And like one bit I love is like when Zarab does like the beam attack at him, where it like has the tendrils, and Ultraman grabs his head and he's like flailing around, but like slowly, and he's like, you can see like there's a pain, there's a struggle there. It's like really simple, but I think the fact that it shows that like Ultraman is vulnerable to the powers of these extraterrestrial beings, that like really makes it feel like a struggle. It feels like a struggle to fight like over the fate of humanity. It makes Ultraman like come across as like so titanic, but also heroic, and like his actions to have such weight and importance.
Yeah, sort of like an Iron Giant kind of.
It's just like, it's fantastic. Oh, I love, by the way, the fight with the second kaiju, where he just like, he doesn't like fly downwards. Yeah, he just like lands feet first, and then he just goes and flies in a bunch of circles before like kicking the kaiju.
Yeah, he just spins around and hits. I was about to say, I really love the way he handled his flight in the movie, where it's it's weirdly jank in a way that fits like the character and what he does.
Yeah, both of these.
The Shiro Sagisu music. The Shiro Sagisu music in this movie is fantastic, from the at the end to like the positive tracks. But regardless, so I think it's time to wrap up. We had our Toku episode. Which one do you like more?
Both these movies pretty good. The shows, yeah, I'll probably watch like more Ultraman. I guess you're probably not gonna watch more OG Kamen Rider much, but yeah, I'd say I do prefer Shin Kamen Rider. Though I think I might actually like the ending of Shin Ultraman even more. But yeah, both of these movies pretty good. 7s.
Oh, great.
Would recommend. Maybe someday we'll watch the Eva rebuilds and Shin Godzilla.
I would definitely give Shin Ultraman a 7 as well.
Same.
Its great strength is that it's very conscientious, it's very smooth, it's very stylish.
Pretty much, yeah, I'd definitely give it the same score.
And CBF, I think we can agree, CBF, this is just the right kind of aggressive positivity.
Yeah.
Especially towards the end. Like, the second half is really what does it for me.
Alright.
Yeah.
That said, we didn't do the intro anytime. Well, whatever. I'm Lone Crit, this is CBF, this is Kaiser, this is the Newtypes podcast.
This is Newtypes podcast.
This is the Newtypes podcast, and oh crap. I think the TV's coming on. Is it the opening? Alright, it's time, boys. Semaru
Shoka! Jigoku no Gundam!
我らを狙う黒い影世界の平和を守るため Go! Go! Let's go!